Well, good morning, everyone else, including Leah and Sierra that are joining me live. Um, Today, I have two different stories. One is the series, and one is a more, just a relaxed, empathetic type of book that's more of a realistic fiction novel. So I'm going to start with the series first. And I actually haven't read the books. I want to this summer, um, which is why it's on this huge list of mine. Um, but I have seen the movie, and I thought that the movie was a very interesting concept. So the one I'm going to share with you guys is I Am Number Four, and it is a sci-fi young adult type of genre book. It is more of one of those books that it has kind of a little bit of confusing concepts because it is sci-fi, but it is a very I think it's probably going to be a really good book based off of what I saw from the movie. Just the concept itself intrigued me. So it says the first book of the #1 New York Times bestselling series and the inspiration for the hit movie from DreamWorks. Okay, so like I said, there is a movie, so I wish I read the book first and then watched the movie, but I'm kind of happy because this is a whole series. It says John Smith seems like an ordinary teenager living a normal life with his guardian, Henry, in Paradise, Ohio, which I think it's kind of interesting that the author chose this location, Paradise, Ohio. Does lead to some sort of irony and foreshadowing there. But for John, keeping a low profile is essential because he is not an ordinary teenager. He's an alien from the planet Lorian, and he's on the run. A group of evil aliens from the planet Magador who destroyed his world are hunting anyone who escaped. So if we have like the different planets, essentially John Smith, which is always like that very vague name, makes you wonder, is John Smith his real name or not, if he's trying to keep a down low, like low key profile. So we've got John Smith. He lives on this planet. He escaped because evil aliens went and destroyed the planet. Now there are so many different people remaining. Oh, so 9 Lorik children, so there's 9, were sent to Earth to live in hiding until they grew up and developed their legacies, which are powers that help them fight back. So legacies are their superpowers in a sense, or different abilities, and help them save us. 3 of them are now dead. John is number 4, as you can tell from the title, and he knows that he's next. So they get like and see different newspaper clippings and all these different things of, oh, they're labeled like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way through 9, because there's 9 children that have these legacies that will be developing within them, these powers. And in this book, essentially, it picks up at I Am Number 4, and it kind of shows, okay, #1, #2, and #3 are all dead. He's number 4. And I think if I remember correctly from the movie, that his name is 4. No, I'm thinking of Divergent. Sorry. But he is number 4, and he's next. So these aliens are kind of after him in this book, and there's a lot of action and adventure going on. So Michael Bay, the director of Transformers, raved that number 4 is a hero for this generation. This epic story is perfect for fans of action-packed science fiction, like the Fifth Wave series by Rick Yancey, the Maze Runner series by James Dashner, and Orson Scott Card's Ender's Game. So if you've read or watched any of those other movies, this book series is up your alley. So there are the other books here on Sora, which is kind of nice. It looks like the Fate of 10 is not available though, so it might be checked out. But the Lorien Legacies is the series name for this book. But definitely from the movie was very good. I only watched it once and it left that impression for me. So let's give it a look-sees. Ooh, we're gonna need to make that larger. My eyes will not be able to take that. Chapter reading settings. Make it larger. Sure, that works. Okay. Prologue. The door starts shaking. It's a flimsy thing made of bamboo shoots held together with tattered lengths of twine. The shake is subtle and stops almost immediately. They lift their heads to listen. A 14-year-old boy and a 15-year-old, or I'm sorry, a 14-year-old boy and a 50-year-old man who everyone thinks is his father, who was born near a different jungle on a different planet hundreds of light years away. They are lying, shirtless on opposite sides of the hut, a mosquito net over each cot. They hear a distant crash, like the sound of an animal breaking the branch of a tree, but in this case, it sounds like the entire tree was broken. What was that? The boy asked. Shh, the man replies. They hear the chirps of insects, nothing more. The man brings his legs over the side of the cot when the shake starts again. A longer, firmer shake, and another crash, this time closer. The man gets to his feet and walks slowly to the door. Silence. The man takes a deep breath as he inches his hand to the latch. The boy sits up. No, the man whispers. And in that instant, the blade of a sword, long and gleaming, made of shining white metal that is not found on Earth, comes through the door and sinks deeply into the man's chest. It protrudes 6 inches out through his back and is quickly pulled free. The man grunts. The boy gasps. The man takes a single breath and utters one word. Run. He falls lifeless to the floor. The boy leaps from the cot, bursts through the rear wall. He doesn't bother with the door or the window. He literally runs through the wall, which breaks apart as if it's paper. So that must be his superpower. Though it's made of strong, hard African mahogany. He tears into the Congo night, leaps over trees, sprints at a speed somewhere around 60 miles per hour. Again, it must be another superpower. His sight and hearing are beyond human. He dodges trees, rips through snarled vines, leaps small streams with a single step. Heavy footsteps are close behind him, getting closer every second. His pursuers also have gifts, and they have something with them, something he has only heard hints of, something he never believed he would see on Earth. The crashing nears. The boy hears a low, intense roar. He knows whatever is behind him is picking up speed. He sees a break in the jungle up ahead. When he reaches it, he sees a huge ravine, 300 feet across and 300 feet down, with a river at the bottom. The river's bank is covered with huge boulders that would break him apart if he fell on them. His only chance is to get across the ravine. He'll have a short running start and one chance to save his own life. Even for him or for any of the others on Earth like him, it's a near impossible leap. Going back or going down or trying to fight them means certain death. He has one shot. There's a deafening roar behind him. They're 20, 30 feet away. He takes 5 steps back and runs. And just before the ledge, he takes off and starts flying across the ravine. He's in the air 3 or 4 seconds. He screams, his arms outstretched in front of him, waiting for either safety or the end. He hits the ground and stumbles forward, stopping at the base of the mammoth tree. He smiles. He can't believe he made it, that he's going to survive, not wanting them to see him. And knowing he needs to get further away from them, he stands. He'll have to keep running. He turns towards the jungle, and as he does, a huge hand wraps itself around his throat. He is lifted off the ground. He struggles, kicks, tries to pull away, but it's futile. That it's over. He should have expected that they'd be on both sides, that once they found him, there would be no escape. The Magadorian lifts him so that he can see the boy's chest, see the amulet that is hanging around his neck, the amulet that only he and his kind can wear. He tears it off and puts it somewhere inside the long black cloak that he's wearing. And when his hand emerges, it's holding the gleaming white metal sword. The boy looks into the Magadorian's deep, wide, motionless black eyes, and he speaks. The legacies live. They will find each other, and when they're ready, they're going to destroy you. The Magadorian laughs, a nasty, mocking laugh. It raises the sword, the only weapon in the universe that can break the charm that until today protected the boy and still protects the others. The blade ignites in a silver flame as it points to the sky, as if it's coming alive, sensing its mission and grimacing in anticipation. As it falls, an arc of light speeding through the blackness of the jungle. The boy still believes that some part of him will survive, and some part of him will make it home. He closes his eyes just before the sword strikes, and then it is over. So I'm going to stop there. So that is just the prequel, or the prologue, I mean. So with the prologue, it can either be things that happen before the story starts, like truly starts. It can be like a little glimpse into the book as to what's about to come. But it's just like usually a little fun thing to toy with the reader. So you are going to have to read to find out what else happens. I do think I'll be reading this book for sure this summer, or this series. The series, I mean, I've heard is really good, and the movie is really good. The second book that I'm going to read today is not a series, it's just a novel, but it does build on realistic fiction area. It does build on empathy. So this is called The Boy at the Back of the Class. And this, it says, is told with humor and heart. The Boy at the Back of the Class offers a child's perspective of the refugee crisis, highlighting the importance of friendship and kindness in a world that doesn't always make sense. Oh, I forgot that this was a refugee book. There used to be an empty chair at the back of Miss Khan's classroom, but on the third Tuesday of the school year, a new kid fills in. 9-year-old Ahmet, a Syrian refugee. The whole class is curious about this new boy. He doesn't seem to smile, and he doesn't talk much. But after learning that Ahmet fled a very real war and was separated from his family along the way, a determined group of his classmates bands together to concoct the greatest idea in the world, a magnificent plan to reunite Ahmet with his loved ones. This accessible, kid-friendly story about the refugee crisis highlights the community-changing potential of standing as an ally and reminds readers that everyone deserves a place to call home. So Let's find out. It's all in the story. So chapter 1 is titled Empty Chair. There used to be an empty chair at the back of my classroom. It wasn't special. It was just empty because no one was sitting in it. But then one day, just 3 weeks after school started, the most exciting thing that could ever happen to anyone happened to me and my 3 best friends. And it all began with that chair. So this is from a 9-year-old's perspective, remember. So they get pretty excited over small things. Usually, the best thing about starting a brand new semester is that you get extra allowance to buy new school supplies with. Every year, on the last Sunday of the summer break, my mom takes me on an extra special adventure to hunt down my notebooks for the new school year. So the fact that the narrator spells mum with M-U-M, a lot of the times that's associated with England. So I'm wondering if England is the setting of where the classroom is or what country. So I'll have to pay attention to that. Sometimes I get so excited that my feet feel jumpy inside and I don't know which store I want to go in first. There aren't many nice school supply stores where I live. They only ever have boring dinosaur sets for boys or princess sets for girls. So Mom takes me on the bus and then the train into the city where there are whole streets of stores, even huge department stores that look like tall blocks of apartments from the outside. Last year, I found a space-themed notebook with pictures of an astronaut flying past the moon. It was on sale, too, so I bought a pencil case, a compass, and protractor set, erasers, and a long ruler, and still had nearly a pound left over. So another evidence to make me think that it's happening in England because they use the currency called pound. It's not the weight system, but that is their money system. So, got another piece of evidence. The ruler is one of my favorite things because the astronaut floats across it in water mixed with silver stars. I played with it so much that the astronaut got stuck to one side, but it wasn't my fault. Mr. Thompson, our teacher last year, had such a boring voice that my hands needed something to do. That's why it's important to have fun stuff in your class because you never know when you'll need to stop your brain from falling asleep or doing something that might get you into detention. This year, I bought a Tintin and Snowy set. I wonder what Tintin and Snowy must be, like animals or something. I love Tintin. Even though he's only a character in a comic book and isn't real, I want to be just like him when I grow up. I think being a reporter and getting to solve mysteries and go on adventures must be the best job in the world. My mom and dad used to buy me a brand new Tintin comic book for my birthdays, and mom saves all the comics for her library is about to throw away because they're too old or ripped and gives them to me. So I have a whole collection of them now. I've read them all at least 50 times, but I'll have to think of another pet besides Tintin's dog Snowy to travel with because I'm allergic to dogs. I don't think cats or hamsters or even trained mice could be half as useful as Snowy. And even though I've thought about it for at least a year now, I still haven't come up with anything. Because the Tintin school supplies were a lot more expensive than the astronaut ones and weren't on sale, I could only buy a pencil case, a small ruler, and 2 erasers. I had to think about it for a very long time, but in the end, I decided spending all of my allowance in one time was worth it. Not just because everything had Tintin on it, but because if you press a button on the pencil case, Snowy barks and Captain Haddock's voice cries out, Blistering barnacles! I've already been yelled at for pressing it in the middle of math class this year. But if you can't press a barking dog button in math, then I don't see the point of it. I don't like math. Simple math is fine, but this year we're learning about long division and square numbers and all sorts of things my brain doesn't like doing. Sometimes I ask for help, but it's embarrassing putting your hand up too many times to ask the same question. I'm lucky because Tom and Josie and Michael always help me with with the things I get stuck with. They're my best friends and we do everything together. Tom's short Tom's got short, spiky hair and a side smile and a big Adam's apple that looks like a ping pong ball got stuck in his throat. He sounds like quite the character. The fact he's kind of like all over the place with his thinking, which, I mean, it's a little kid for you. So definitely this seems like a book that'll keep you entertained. He's the smallest. Oh my gosh, sorry. He's the smallest of our group, but he's also the funniest. He only joined our class last year after his parents moved here from America. But we became friends instantly. He has 3 older brothers who all tease and bully him. Not seriously, only as a joke, but I think they steal his food too, which is only why he's so skinny and always super hungry. I once saw him eat a whole pizza with extra toppings and double cheeseburger for lunch and still not feel full. So I hide my snacks and chocolate bars from him when I can. Josie has large brown eyes and at least a million freckles on her face. She's tall and gangly and is always chewing on her hair. She's the fastest girl in our year and can kick a soccer ball past any goalie from the other side of the field. She's the coolest person I know, and I've known her since we were 3. Our moms say we became instant friends the first day we started preschool, so they decided to become friends too. I don't really remember much about myself at that age, but Josie is in all of my school memories. We even got our first detention together last year, all because of a hamster named Herbert. Josie had heard one of the upper school bullies say that he was going to flush our class hamster Herbert down the toilet at the end of the day. Josie told me, and we decided to go on a hamster rescue mission. We hid Herbert in my backpack before school ended and took him straight to my house. But, of course, Mom found out and made me take him back the very next day. I tried to explain to boring Mr. Thompson what had happened, but he wouldn't listen and gave me detention. And even though she didn't have to, Josie stood up and said she had helped to steal Herbert too, just so we could do detention together. You know, a friend's a best friend when they're willing to sit in detention with you. Michael has the neatest, puffiest afro out of all the boys in our year. Most people think he's weird, but not us. His glasses are always broken, and his shoelaces were never done right, so he's always tripping up or bumping into things when he walks. But we're also used to it now that we never notice. He's mostly quiet, but when he does say something, grown-ups usually look impressed and say that he's ingenious or insightful, or use other strange words that begin with N. I don't know what they mean, but I guess they mean he's smart. Grown-ups always like commenting or coming up with long words for simple things. Michael gets made fun of a lot because he can't run fast or kick a ball in a straight line, but he doesn't care. I wouldn't care either if I were as rich as him. His dad is a professor and his mom is a lawyer, and because they're always busy, they buy him all the latest gadgets and books and the coolest new games. When we went to his house last year for his birthday party, we saw his room for the first time. It looked like the inside of a toy store. I think it must be easier not to care about what people think when you've got that many toys in your life. I don't know if I could agree with that. Josie and Michael are always competing with each other to see who can get the most gold stars and A's in class. Michael is the best at history, and Josie is the best at math. But I'm better at reading and spelling than both of them, especially Josie. She hates reading and never ever reads anything outside class. She says she doesn't have an imagination, so there's no point in reading books. And I find that strange because how can anyone not have an imagination? I think she must have had one when she was younger, but that it was knocked out of her when she fell off her bike last summer. Mom says people with imaginations are dead inside. I don't think Josie is dead anywhere. She talks too much. Having three best friends can make school seem like the best place to be, even on the most boring day. Although this year, school has become a whole lot more fun, and that's because our new teacher, Mrs. Khan. Mrs. Khan has extra bouncy hair and always smells of strawberry jam, which is much better than smelling like old socks like Mr. Thompson does. She's new to the school and extra smart, much smarter than Mr. Thompson ever was. And she gives us prizes on Fridays when we've all been good. No other teacher in our year does that. Mrs. Khan lets us do all sorts of interesting things that we have never done before. In the first week of school, she helped us make musical instruments out of things we found in the school's recycling bin. And in the second week, she brought in a brand new comic book to read to us that wasn't even in the school library yet. Then, in the third week, something happened that was so surprising and made everyone so curious that even Mrs. Khan, have I been saying Mrs. Thompson? Oops, if I did, sorry. That even Mrs. Khan couldn't make us focus on our lessons properly. And it all began with an empty chair. It was on third Tuesday after school had started, and Mrs. Khan was taking attendance. She was just about to call my name when there was a loud knock at the door. Usually when there's a knock on the door, it's just someone from another class bringing a note, so no one really pays attention. But this time, it was Mrs. Sanders, the principal. Mrs. Sanders always wears her hair in the exact same way and peers over her glasses whenever she talks to anyone. Everyone is scared of her because when she gives attention, she doesn't just make you sit in the room. She makes you memorize long words from the dictionary and doesn't let you leave until you've learned them all by heart, the meaning and the spelling. I've even heard of lower graders being stuck in detention for hours because they had to learn words that were as long as this page. So when we saw that it was Mrs. Sanders at the door, we fell silent. She looked very serious as she walked up to Mrs. Khan, and we all wondered who was in trouble. After she had whispered and nodded for a few seconds, she suddenly turned around and, peering over her glasses at us, pointed to the empty chair in the back of the class. All of us turned around to have a look at the empty chair. This was the chair. And I said, it was a pretty ordinary chair, and it was empty because a girl named Dina left her class at the end of last year to move to Wales. Yep, this is in England. Well, possibly. No one really missed her except for her best friend Clarissa. Dina had been a bit of a show-off and was always talking about how many presents her parents got her every week and how many pairs of shoes she had and all sorts of things that no one else cared about. She liked to sit in the back of class because then she and Clarissa could pretend to pay attention when really they were drawing pictures of their favorite pop stars and giggling about someone they didn't like. Someone else could have taken that seat, but no one really wanted to sit next to Clarissa. That's why the chair was empty. After whispering for a few more seconds with Mrs. Kahn, Mrs. Sanders left the room. We expected Mrs. Kahn to say something, but she seemed to be waiting, so we waited too. It was all very serious and exciting, but before we could start guessing about what was going on, Mrs. Sanders came back, and this time she wasn't alone. Standing beside her was a boy none of us had ever seen before. He had short dark hair and large eyes that hardly blinked and smooth pale skin. Everyone, said Mrs. Kahn as the boy went and stood next to her, this is Ahmet, and he'll be joining our class today, starting today. He's just moved to London and is new to the school, so I hope you'll all do your very best to make him feel welcome. As we watched in silence as Mrs. Sanders led him to the empty chair, I felt sorry for him because I knew he wouldn't be sitting next to Clarissa very much. Wouldn't like sitting next to Clarissa very much. She still missed Dina, and everyone knew she hated boys. She says they're stupid and smell. I think it must be one of the worst things in the world to be new to a place and have to sit with people you don't know, especially people who stare and scowl at you like Clarissa was doing. I made a secret promise to myself right then and there that I would be friends with the new boy. I happened to have some lemon candies in my bag that morning. I would try to give him one at recess, and I would ask Josie and Tom and Michael if they would be his friends too. After all, having four new friends would be much better than having none, especially for a boy who looked as scared and as sad as the one now sitting in the back of our class. And that is where I'm going to stop there. So that was a very bad angle I had the computer at. Oops. But I hope all of you have a great Thursday. Remember, tomorrow is our pickup and drop-off time. If you guys can label any of like my classroom books, if you have any, with like a post-it and just say readingers if it's not labeled already, or just make sure it is labeled, I would greatly appreciate it, because they're just kind of, from what I've heard, collecting the stuff that you're bringing, and then they sort it later. So they don't remember who had what teacher, that kind of thing. So if you can label the books, like readinger, with the post-it, I would greatly appreciate that, just to make it easier for them, and to make sure I get my books back. So otherwise, I'm looking forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. 8 to 11, remember. If you can't make those times, there are 2 other extra times on Monday and Tuesday next week. So let me know if you have any questions with that. But otherwise, I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow.